You're listening to Closing Market Weekly, the show where real estate closings meet real world insight. With your host, Phillip Hogan. And every week we break down the trends, tools, and the timing that keeps deals moving forward. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Phillip Hogan, the host to Closing Market Weekly, the CEO to Signing Services of America, and the author to Relentless Excellence, a story of family, business building, and value-driven leadership. Today's episode is going to focus on something that I kind of like really stirred up a little bit and thought that this might be a really great topic for you homeowners and our audience. So we're going to be talking about the three key players in the settlement services industry. So many of you homeowners, that is, who have purchased homes, you had these, you went through the final closing process and now you're at the signing and you've got a stack of documents that you have to sign. And it may seem overwhelming to have all of those documents signed. And sometimes it can be, but we try to make it as painless as possible. Nonetheless, I thought that you should know, well, who are the critical players that are involved in not only preparing those documents, but coordinating with one another to get the signing or get the closing to the table so you can actually have those documents signed. So the first person that will be considered the key player is the signing agent, the notary signing agent. And so their role is to show up to the appointment with the documents. And by the way, that could be either in person or remotely. So, we have the ability to do what's called remote online notarization, where you can sign the documents electronically and the notary could witness you signing those documents through his computer or her computer. And then, of course, the documents could be notarized. And it's a really efficient process. And many, many states have approved the remote online notarization process. It saves time, it saves resources, and it's completely 100% secure. So you're meeting with the notary. They need to verify your ID. They need to ensure that all loan documents are properly signed, dated, and of course, notarized. And then, of course, the notary will return those documents to whomever hired him or her to meet with you. And thus, that will now introduce us into the second person in this trio relationship. And believe it or not, it gets kind of deep. So hang on. So now we at the title company, right? So now we have a title agent, and the title agent's role is to perform title search, right? They want to make sure that the property that you're acquiring, no matter what type of property it is that the title is free and clear. You do not want to buy a property where the title is not free and clear, because what can happen, you may be, become responsible for whatever the issues are that are associated with the title. So the title agent has a very critical role in making sure that the title is free and clear. They also issue title insurance for the buyer and the lender. And the title insurance does what? Protects both the buyer and lender in the event there's some kind of issues that are going on with the title. Another role of the title agent is to prepare key closing documents, like the closing disclosure, like the settlement statement, like the title for the property, right? That's what the title agent does. And oftentimes they coordinate the closing process with a number of other professionals that were required to bring that file to closing. The third person that's involved in the process of that trio relationship is the escrow officer. Now, mind you, listen very carefully between the different duties of the escrow officer and that of the title agent. So the escrow officer manages the money and the transaction logistics, manages the money. I like that part. They manage the money. Meaning that, when you're buying a home, you have a new lender, and then you have the old lender. So the new lender pushes the money to the escrow officer, and the escrow officer holds on to it. And when it's time to pay people off that are involved with the transaction of your home, then that's their role. So the list of duties that I've identified for the escrow officer are: they hold the funds in a neutral third-party account, right? a third-party account. So nobody else has access to those funds except the escrow officer because it's in their particular account. Obviously, it's in the company that they work for, and it's in the company's account. They collect and distribute money to the buyer, to the lender, and then, of course, to the seller, right? So that's the second role of the escrow officer. The third role is ensures all conditions are met before closing. And this is really, really important, right? And so on the Signing Services of America side, we work with a lot of different title companies and escrow offices. And sometimes, their roles are so tight that the file may be scheduled to close at 2 p.m., but because all of there may be some conditions that were not met, and therefore the closing needs to be extended until those conditions are met. And the escrow officer is the person who ultimately has the final call, and the lender, in terms of making sure that your file is ready for closing. And then obviously the escrow officer finalizes the transaction and sends for recording. And what that means is that, the signing actually got closed. All the documents got executed. Funds have been transferred to all of the appropriate parties. And then, of course, those that needed to be compensated for the services rendered had been done. And then what's important is the new title then has to be recorded in the county as to where the property is located. This is a very important part that I want you to understand. That the title, once you have signed the title, the transaction may be complete as far as you're concerned, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, but the process continues until by the title going to the recording department in the county in which the property is located, and the county has to do their proceedings for that to be complete. And once that's completed, they will mail the new title. Check you now, the new title to the new homeowners. So Mr. and Mrs. New Homeowner will get a title that will have their name as showing that evidence that you are now the new owners to that particular property. And that's a very important document that should be safeguarded at all times. And so those three roles are all involved, all have their critical categories and duties to work together to bringing your file to a close. No one person can work without the other, and no one person can do what the other person does. Everybody needs to have their set roles and come together in one accord to make Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner or Mr. and Mrs. New Homeowner happier because now you have your new home. And so that is that's the process that every transaction will go through as it relates to the mortgages. And then there are different kind of mortgage products, and maybe we'll talk about that at another time. But I thought that this topic would be really helpful to the homeowner to help you understand who are the players that's involved, what are their roles, and why do they have to do what they do. Thanks for tuning in to the Closing Market Weekly. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone in the industry. For more insights from the front lines of real estate closings, we'll see you next week.